Hello, welcome back to Access and to another of our top 10 lists, designed to guide you through the huge library of games available on PS4. This week we're looking at the very best of couch co-op. This is our second top 10 on co-op titles. You can check out our recommendations for best co-op campaigns in the description. But here, we're looking specifically at the best local co-op experiences. Titles that might be playable online, but are at their absolute best played together around the same TV. And we're starting with Streets of Rage 4, a fantastic update of an arcade classic. In the great SNES vs Mega Drive playground wars of the 90s, I was firmly Team Mega Drive, and Streets of Rage 2 is a glowing memory from that era. Streets of Rage 4 is more than an update of this hallowed bit of nostalgia. It's part sequel, part remake, and part careful archiving, a faithful recreation and preservation of everything that made the original series such a replayable blast. In fact, the game is all about legacy. 10 years after the fall of Mr. X, his children, the Y-twins, are the villains of the piece, while Adam's daughter Cherry teams up with returning heroes Axel and Blaze to take them on. The campaign is pitch perfect, with a fresh graphical style that seems a clean update rather than a reinvention of the old look, and tight arcade combat that's largely familiar but adds some new frills. But the game's secret weapon are the 12 playable characters unlocked as you progress, original versions of the main lineup from each of the 3 old Streets of Rage games, all with their original looks and movesets. This makes Streets of Rage 4 brilliant for random bouts of mix and match co-op campaigning, but also makes it in effect a sequel to each of the old games individually, bringing them all together and continuing them each in turn, a respectful, celebratory masterstroke. Streets of Rage 4 supports local co-op for 4 players, online co-op for 2 players, with no option to combine the two. Speaking of classic arcade action, our next entry is Nex Machina. Nex Machina feels like the ultimate evolution of a particular type of coin-op inspired, intense arcade shooter. It's spectacular on its own terms, a twin-stick blaster with a dash mechanic for when things get overwhelming, which is basically all the time, built from flashing neon effects and exploding voxel enemies. It's a spiritual successor to developer Housemarque's superb PS4 launch title Resogun, which also has co-op and which you should also play, not just in all the beautiful disintegration, but in the strategic plate spinning of having humans to save amidst plotting your own moment-to-moment survival in the surging, seething battleground. Of course, the twin-stick controls also make Nex Machina a follow-up of sorts to Housemarque's other PlayStation titles, Dead Nation, Alien Nation, and Super Stardust HD Ultra, all of which have co-op, all of which you should play. But in a wonderful touch, Nex Machina is a collaboration with arcade design legend Eugene Jarvis, which means it's also a successor to Defender, Robotron, and Super Smash TV. It is, in other words, the child of generations of brilliant, groundbreaking games and countless moments of split-second triumph and elation. Nex Machina supports local co-op for 2 players.
World complete.
We're sticking with twin-stick shooters for our next title, HELLDIVERS. On the surface, HELLDIVERS looks a little like the already mentioned Alien Nation, dropping in on alien worlds and hammering away at the hordes of enemies that live there. But there's a key difference. HELLDIVERS has a tactical dimension, a specifically cooperative tactical dimension that stops it from being a pure Twitch arcade experience. In the galactic campaign to exterminate 3 different extraterrestrial races, you get to choose, almost XCOM-like, the warfront, planet type and difficulty level of the mission you'd like to undertake. Initially you'll be focused on unlocking upgrades and new weapons, but Diablo style there's also a longer term satisfaction in the gameplay itself, especially given the level of coordination needed to tackle all but the simplest levels. Ammo is scarce and early reloads toss out whatever's left of your magazine. Powerful ordnance is available, but like interacting with mission objectives, requires you to put in complex code, which is a nightmare during frantic battles. Throw in friendly fire, the danger of your own dropping power-ups, and down to the wire waits for extraction, and HELLDIVERS becomes a lean, unforgiving operation that requires tight communication and slick teamwork. HELLDIVERS supports local co-op for 4 players, online co-op for 4 players, and any combination of local and online. Next up is Broforce, which is what you'd get if you took all of the oiled bicep action machismo of 80s action cinema, screwed it up into a ball, and turned that ball into a side-scrolling shooter. Look, the analogy isn't important. Certainly it seems inappropriate for us to care more about the practicalities of the abstract than the makers of Broforce, who have made a melting pot of pixelated excess featuring knockoff versions of every Hollywood action icon going. From not Sly Stallone as Rambro, to not Arnold Schwarzenegger as Bramando, to not Bruce Willis as Brohard. Each bro has a different, typically overpowered weapon, but the hook, just one hit point of health. Extra lives can be gained by saving captive bros on the way through each level, at which point you become that randomly selected bro, introducing the choice of, do I want the security of another life or to stick with this character? The nuance of this choice might get a bit lost when things get really hectic. When the bros unleash their full power, especially in co-op, the screen becomes a confetti shower of destructible 2D environments. But there's more strategizing and difficulty spiking here than it may first appear, and you'll need to use brains as well as your plentiful reserves of brawn to pacify this world in the name of freedom. Broforce supports local co-op for 4 players, online co-op for 4 players, with no option to combine the two. A complete change of pace now as we take in the wonderful Swords of Ditto. This is a procedurally generated dungeon crawler with a permadeath twist. While your ultimate goal is to defeat the incredibly evil witch Mormo in 3 days for some reason, there's a good chance you won't manage this on your first go. Or your second. And each time you fail, your hero, or heroes in the super accessible 2-player co-op, dies forever. Then 100 years pass. Another set of heroes wakes up, and then they too have 3 days to prepare and then defeat Mormo. Persistence comes in the form of the sword of the title. While you're dead, the sword is leveled and stays that way, giving you a way to progress through the centuries as your new heroes wake in versions of the world change from those you explored in previous lives. Exploring the town to prepare and progress before entering the Mormo showdown has a mix of Adventure Time brightness and Zelda vibes, but Ditto's unflinching endgame provides a bit of steel behind the sunshine too. Swords of Ditto supports local co-op for 2 players. Sticking with fresh takes on classic genres, next up is Guacamelee Super Turbo Championship Edition. Yes, we've gone for the PS4 version of the original, because while Guacamelee 2 is still great, there's nothing like the freshness of the first game. A stylish Metroidvania seeped in luchador lore and Mexican culture. Guacamelee blends the playful, over-the-top staging of lucha libre wrestling with the unbending challenge of the finest Metroidvanias, demanding platform precision, smart use of your growing arsenal of abilities, and expert map work to find your way both forwards and back to newly explorable areas. Like the awesome Hollow Knight, Guacamelee finds new ways to make an old formula compelling, though unlike Hollow Knight, part of Guacamelee's appeal lies in its drop-in, drop-out co-op, which, while it can't help you overcome the game's stiffest platforming sections, does at least make it possible to tag-team the game's boss battles. Guacamelee supports local co-op for 4 players. Our next game is the brilliantly original and, safe to say, completely unique Cuphead. A recent addition to PS4, Cuphead has a reputation for being exceptionally difficult, which, coupled with its distinctive old-school animated look, makes it from the outside an intriguing contradiction of the sunny and the sinister. Well, it looks that way from the inside too. Cuphead's gameplay is a very smooth mix of platformer and bullet hell shooter, almost a Mega Man in Mickey Mouse clothing, and the rubber hose visuals have an innate mix of brightness with surreal sharp-toothed subtext that make the game attractive with a bit of a bite. The story features you, Cuphead, and your brother Mugman in co-op, locked into a debt-collecting deal with the devil. These debt collections form the basis of levels and frequent boss battles, which is where Cuphead gets its reputation. They are tricky. I mean, you can see that they're tricky, but with a bit of patience they're also fair and rewarding, requiring a little practice and a lot of chipper, old-style optimism to make Cuphead something really special. Cuphead supports local co-op for 2 players. A bit of a cheat with our next entry, this list was always going to feature 1 LEGO game, so we've gone for 2 in LEGO Harry Potter Collection. Really, we could have chosen half a dozen different LEGO titles, so good has the series become at capturing the spirit of big screen franchises from the Avengers to Star Wars. But there's something about the interaction of Harry Potter with the playful LEGO universe that's just irresistible. Like all the best LEGO games, it does its source material justice by making fun of it as relentlessly as possible, somehow in the process making us yearn for a time of annual Hogwarts cinema visits and the gradual unfolding of Harry's increasingly serious adventures. Sub your favourite LEGO partnered universe in here if you really need to, because the co-op mechanics and puzzle and punch gameplay are pretty standard throughout the series, but for us, nothing will beat the literal and figurative magic of immersing ourselves in the wizarding world, block by block. LEGO Harry Potter Collection supports local co-op for 2 players. The Escapists 2 is unlike anything else on this list, a strategic prison break indie with huge potential both for meticulous planning and last gasp improvisation. The basics are simple. You are in prison and you're trying to get out, which means observing the routines of the guards and inmates around you, exploring your surroundings undetected, and using the makeshift tools you piece together to find a way out. There's an old school charm to the Escapist 2's sandbox approach, a touch of trial and error guesswork combined with satisfying problem solving that'll have you approaching each new prison with a patient, calculating eye. Split screen co-op just adds to the fun, a sense of conspiracy and heart-in-mouth adventure working brilliantly with the game's compelling puzzle work. The Escapists 2 supports local co-op for 4 players, online co-op for 4 players, with no option to combine the two. Finally, to round off our list of the best couch co-op games on PS4, we have a PlayStation icon, Lara Croft in the isometric adventure The Temple of Osiris. This is a twin-stick shooter with tomb-raiding finesse. Yes, there's plenty of weapon play as Lara and fellow treasure hunter Carter Bell disturb Egyptian gods while trying to steal old things and end up shooting the minions of darkness. But there's also co-op specific puzzling with grappling hooks put to more uses than you will previously have thought possible, and solutions that scale specifically to the number of friends you have playing with you. Up to 4 players can work through the mysteries of the pyramids together, with the other 2 playable characters being actual Egyptian gods, Isis and Osiris, with magical staffs and everything. It's a bit of a change from the series' usual supernatural tease, but that doesn't stop this from feeling like a thoughtful, smartly designed extra to the Tomb Raider canon. Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris supports local co-op for 4 players, online co-op for 2 players, and any combination of the 2. That's it for our top 10 best couch co-op games on PS4. We'd love to hear your favourites in the comments. We're sure there's loads we couldn't fit in. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more like this.
PlayStation